ladies and gentlemen. Week 9 of the National Football League is here. Now, last week in week 8, we did go an impressive 13-3 in the money line. Again, only missing 3 games. Those 3 games being we missed Tennessee beating Atlanta, missed the Saints beating the Colts, and then obviously missed Denver beating Kansas City. My 5 best bets for last week: Minnesota hit against Green Bay, Cincinnati hit against San Francisco, Jacksonville hit against Pittsburgh, Jets pushed against the Giants. It was our first push for the year. Our one loss being Indianapolis losing to the Saints. So in total, 13-3 in the money line again, 82-40 now on the year. With 3-1-1 in best bets. That puts me at 24 for 39 with one push on the year in best bets. After week 9, I will go through after all the games are over on Tuesday. I'll give you guys where we were at the halfway point in the 2022 NFL season when it came to money line and best bets. Also, next Tuesday on my Substack page, I'm going to be giving my 2023 NFL midseason report card. This will be the 4th year I do this. My Substack page is linked in the description below, where I go at the midpoint of the season. I put every NFL team in a tier list from Super Bowl contender to the bottom of the league, and we construct what the NFL looks like. Trade deadline's over now, and we preview almost the second half of the NFL season. But business is at hand now. We're in week 9 of the 2023 NFL season. This week, a lot of the lines are the same. Some of these games, bad quarterbacks. We don't know what quarterbacks are going to play. Some trickiness, but the bets I did pick, I really like. So without further ado, these are my week 9 NFL money line picks and best bets. We're starting off Thursday Night Football. Will Levis, the Tennessee Titans. Derrick Henry is still there. They did not move him at the trade deadline, but they go into Pittsburgh against a pissed-off Mike Tomlin team that looked like Dookie against the Jacksonville Jaguars last Sunday. Now, reportedly, Kenny Pickett is going to start. We saw him lead the game in the second quarter. Mitch Trubisky came in, did not play well. I think the Steelers are angry. I think they're mad. I think they find a way to tackle Derrick Henry. Tennessee is going to have to figure out what they have in Will Levis. And I said before the draft, out of the quarterback out of Kentucky, reminded me a little bit of Baker Mayfield, reminded me a little bit of Zach Wilson, reminded me a little bit of Johnny Manziel. Too cocky for my liking. I think he gets caught up in his big arms, his big gun show with his shirt off. I think he does have some talent. I think he'll win some games in this league. Ultimately, I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. I think on a short week, Pittsburgh knows they have to stop the run. They know they're in a way tougher division in Tennessee. Pittsburgh is still looking for the postseason. Tennessee is still looking for the future. It's why in my best bets, I'm taking Pittsburgh minus 2.5. I think they cover. I think it's almost a perfect line. I think they win by about a field goal, if not maybe a touchdown. I think it's a very low-scoring game, 20-17, maybe even 17-14. A lot of running the football, not a lot of yards, a lot of punts. You've got 2 defensive coaches, so if you like offense, it's not going to be the game for you. But ultimately, the Steelers will win the game. Then we go across to Germany, where the Miami Dolphins and Tyreek Hill take on his former team in the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, if the Chiefs did not lose to Denver last week, I would have probably picked Miami in this game. I find it interesting that KC on a neutral field is only a 2.5-point favorite. That means in some areas, and I would agree with Vegas, especially at the skill position, they think Miami is just better than Kansas City. But Kansas City now going into their bye, they know they got the Super Bowl rematch coming up after their bye. They know the competition they have in the AFC with Cincinnati, Baltimore, Jacksonville, Miami included, Buffalo, to try to get that number 1 seed in the AFC. They now have 2 losses. Everybody's saying, what's wrong with Kansas City? The noise is out there. Taylor Swift will probably not make the trip. I still think Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, they bounce back. Andy Reid, a smarter coach. Chris Jones, big defensive lineman. They muck up to his throwing lane a little bit. They don't let Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle beat them over the top. Miami, we know, has struggled against good teams all season long. I think they have some success against the Chiefs defense. More than they did against Buffalo, more than they did against Philly. Ultimately, Kansas City wins by probably a field goal, if not a touchdown. Like a 27-20, 27-24 type ball game. Not going to bet it, but I do like Kansas City here. Next game. Originally, this was going to be my best bet. And I'm telling you right now, it's my survivor pick of the week. But I'm not going to bet the number because I think it's just a teeny bit too high. That is Arizona going to Cleveland. We don't know who's going to start for Arizona. Obviously, they just got rid of Josh Downs in Minnesota. It's either going to be some rookie kid we never heard of, or it's going to be Kyler Murray, which I have said on multiple occasions on this show. If I'm Arizona, I do not play Kyler Murray. I keep him healthy. I trade him in the offseason. I draft, Caleb Williams or Drake May. Hopefully you get the number one pick. If not, you got the fallback option in Drake May. I would have not hired Jonathan Gannon as my head coach, but teaches his own as Arizona looks to rebuild. They have a ton of picks. They have Houston's first round pick in next year's draft. They can use it to get him some receivers, some offensive line help, and Arizona's on their way. I don't think Kyler Murray is a bad quarterback. I think he was special. I think he has some maturity issues. And I think that him and Arizona right now are just not a good fit. I think Kyler needs to get out of Arizona. He needs to find an offensive coach that will put his arms around him, support him, and then we'll see where obviously the franchise goes from there. Listen, I talked about it on Tuesday's show, and I know Tuesday's show was a little bit of rapid fire because we had the breaking news with James Harden, because of the World Series, because of my work schedule. I wasn't able to record a lot. But Kevin Stefanski cost the Browns that game in Seattle. You do not throw the ball there on 3rd and 3. Run the ball twice with Kareem Hunt or Pierre Strong, who has come on. You either punt the football on 4th down or you go for it. You need 2 plays to get 3 yards, ice the game. Instead, P.J. Walker throws an interception to Jamal Adams off of a helmet of a player, and the Browns lose that game no matter what, no matter if it's Deshaun Watson or if it's PJ Walker. And I said earlier in the show, we were talking about the NFL trade deadline situation. I had said that in my humble opinion, I think the Browns should have went out. They should have got a quarterback. I know they were in talk with the Commanders about Jacoby Brissett. They needed to pull off some kind of move because I don't think Deshaun Watson's playing for the rest of this year. I think he's hurt more than what the Browns are leading on, and I think it's turning into an unmitigated disaster in Cleveland. Nonetheless, they're still winning without him. They should win this week. I would like it if it's at 7. I would take the Browns. There's a chance Arizona does a backdoor cover. There's also a chance here the Browns blow them out by 20. A lot like Arizona games, so I'm not going to bet the number. Maybe it would have been a shock to you, but I love the Ravens here minus 5.5. Is anybody not paying attention to what I've said the last couple of years about Baltimore? That for the first 10 weeks of last year, they were the only team in the NFL, including Philadelphia and Kansas City, to hold a double-digit lead in every game. They were leading the AFC North over that vaunted Cincinnati Bengals team. Lamar Jackson just got hurt at the end of the year, and that was the bottom line decision. That's why the Ravens could not win that division. This year, their defense is getting healthier. They have their weapons back. Odell Beckham's back. Zay Flowers is back. We saw them dismantle Detroit a couple weeks ago. I know Pete Carroll is very good on the East Coast. I know they came into Cincinnati and they should have won that game, but Geno Smith played god-awful in that game. I think the trend continues. I think the Ravens put a lot of pressure on Geno Smith. The Seattle offense is awful. I think there's a huge chance here for Baltimore to do to Seattle what they did to Detroit and blow them out. Geno Smith really struggles. Seattle should have lost that game to the Browns last week. I think they eat a little bit of humble pie here. Baltimore covers the 5.5. And we've seen good Sam Howell, bad Sam Howell. Last week against Philadelphia, outside of the one interception to Reed, it was obviously a good Sam Howell day. Threw for almost 400 yards against Bill Belichick, against what is essentially a rookie quarterback, even though he did not play, a lot his first year. He played one game. I think Belichick rattles this kid. I think we get a bad Sam Howell day out of the Commanders, or the locker room is bad after they just gave away Chase Young and Montez Sweat for essentially nothing. Ron Rivera's time is coming. Washington's going to make swift changes this offseason. I think New England gets a big bounce back victory here. They cover the 3.5. I'm also betting them in this situation. Tampa at Houston. I got to tell you, I like Houston. I said it earlier in the trade deadline segment. I think Tampa should bench Baker Mayfield. I think you got to go with Kyle Trask. I think you got to see what you have, lose the rest of your games, go get a quarterback, go get an offensive-minded head coach. Todd Bowles does not need to be in that building anymore. I think he's sort of holding the franchise back. Now, Houston has a defensive-minded head coach, D'Amico Ryan, so I think it's starting to just build the culture. I don't think he's a great coach, but I do think that Houston brought in a lot of free agents to make them viable. They lost last week to Carolina. They're going to play well. They don't have a great secondary, which again, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I think there's an opportunity here for Tampa to create some big plays. Maybe Houston just wins by a field goal in a dome, nice weather. Maybe Baker Mayfield does play well, which I'm not going to bet this game. I don't think this is going to be an incredibly aesthetically pleasing game, if you will. But I'm happy for Tampa. They did not trade Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. I would re-sign Mike Evans. He's one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. And to give your new future young quarterback the most weapons possible is the best situation possible, which is why I applaud Tampa for doing that. Ultimately, Houston will win this game. We don't know who's playing quarterback for the Rams. Jordan Love looks terrible for the Packers. This is the worst game on the slate. I don't know what to say about this game. Green Bay is favored by 3 at home. I just don't trust Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. I trust Sean McVay, no matter if it's Matthew Stafford, no matter if it's Stetson Bennett, no matter if it's somebody else for the LA Rams. I think they have more pieces offensively than Green Bay. I think they'll go into Green Bay. They will win the game in a very ugly game. I was considering betting this my best bet. I think there's better numbers on the board. I think Tyson Bagent. This goes back to sort of my no tape theory, where NFL defenses don't have tape on a guy for a week. He comes in, he lights the world up. The next week they have tape on him. He can't move the ball. Chicago. Again, they have a defensive foundational piece for the future now in Montez Sweat. They kept Jalen Johnson, They did not deal with the deadline. They have some good foundational pieces on defense. They need to find out if Justin Fields, their franchise quarterback. We know the Saints offense started humming last week. We know that their defense is still very good. I think they shut down the Bears offense this week. Maybe Chicago gets a backdoor cover. Maybe they lose by 7, but I really like the Saints here at -7.5. Again, I just think there's better numbers on the board not to best bet this game. Minnesota and Atlanta, another strange one. A lot like, the Rams and Green Bay, a lot like Tampa and Houston. Not a ton of juice to it. We know Minnesota lost Kirk Cousins. We know Josh Dobbs is there now. We know he's going to start. But nobody knows what to expect out of Minnesota on a week-to-week basis. Atlanta is favored by 4.5 at home. God knows what to expect out of the Atlanta Falcons. They don't know how to use their running back pieces right. They don't know how to use their wide receiver positions right. Desmond Ridder was benched last week. We don't know if it's going to be him or Taylor Heineke. This is a mess of a game. Atlanta is one of those teams that loses one, wins one, loses one, wins one, loses one, wins one. A lot like the Minnesota Vikings. Atlanta is home here, which is the reason why I'll take him. If Minnesota was home, I'd probably take the Vikings. I really don't have a ton of comments on this game. Next, we have the Frank Reich Bowl as Frank Reich faces his former team. Now, Frank Reich is at home. Shane Steichen's Indianapolis Colts coming to town with Gardner Minshew. Bryce Young coming off his first game. Indianapolis is favored by 2.5 points. I am going to take the Colts here on the road. Again, I think Carolina got their nice 1-1 for the season. I think they have a pretty good defense, but I think Shane Steichen is a smart offensive coach. The Colts are trying to win as many games as they can. They have Jonathan Taylor back. Zach Moss is still running the ball well. Michael Pittman is at a decent year out wide receiver. The Colts' problem really has been defense. They moved the ball pretty well offensively. They just couldn't stop anybody. I think Carolina's offense stymies here. Indianapolis goes on the road. They win the game. Next game, we got Giants at the Raiders. Now, you guys know my theory on interim head coaches. I believe this is a week where everybody's going to sell their stock on the Raiders. We know Josh McDaniels is out of town now. We talked about earlier in the podcast, just found out Aiden O'Connell is going to be starting as Vegas sort of turns into a youth movement. But we all see it around the week. There may not be great interim head coaches in the NFL, but what do? They come out week one. Vegas plays really well. They play really hard. I'm not going to trust it because who the hell knows? This is one of those games, again, like a Rams-Packers game where you just don't know what you're going to expect. We don't know who the quarterback is for the New York Giants. I'm just going to play it safe here. I'm going to take the Raiders at home. Not a lot to say about it. And then Dallas at Philadelphia. Obviously, this is a big game, not only for me, but in the NFL this week. I'm taking my Eagles -3 against the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Eagles are the best offensive line. I think they have the best defensive line in football. Dak Prescott plays better against the Eagles in Dallas than he does in Philadelphia. He struggles outside there at the wing. The Cowboys do have CeeDee Lamb, but they're going to have to run the football. And against that Eagles' ferocious defensive front, I don't think Tony Pollard gets a ton going on the ground. Dallas relies a lot on Dak Prescott. I think that Jalen Hurts and the Eagles' offense, which again can rarely be stopped, it feels like, even against good defenses, they almost force themselves to turn the football over, which I do think that Dallas will probably get an interception. I think they'll get some turnovers. That's just the way to keep them in this game, because up to that point, you can't really stop Philadelphia. Again, if it wasn't for the 2 fumbles on the goal line, they would have put up 50 against Washington. So in my opinion, the Eagles are going to win this game against their arch rivals. They'll win it by about a touchdown. Eagles cover the -3. And then Bills at Cincinnati. I'm going to take the Bengals here -2.5. I'm going to bet it simply because even though I love Josh Allen, he's one of my top 3 favorite quarterbacks in the National Football League. I like Buffalo's offense on some nights, but this is back-to-back primetime games for the Bills, and we just don't know what to expect out of Buffalo, who just got hammered last year in the divisional round in the snow by a Cincinnati Bengals team that when Joe Burrow is healthy, the Bengals are just better than Buffalo. I don't understand this line. I think it should be a little bit higher. As you can see, most of these lines this week are 2.5, 3 points. And I think Cincinnati should be like a 4 or 5 point favorite. I think they at least win by a touchdown here. I think Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, they have a really big game. Joe Mixon has a chance to get going on the ground in this game. And Buffalo has more questions to me moving forward than Cincinnati because they can't protect Josh Allen. They're not going to be able to run the ball well with James Cook. And so that's the reason why in this scenario, I'm taking the Bengals. And then Monday night, listen, I can't trust Brandon Staley to, cover 3 against the Jets. I mean, who knows? The Jets have almost beaten the Chiefs this year. They've beaten the Eagles. Could they go in and beat the Chargers? Absolutely. The way Zach Wilson played last week, if he plays like that again, the Jets cannot beat anybody. But the Chargers, who last week they were on the hot seat because we all said if they lose to Tyson Bagent and the Chicago Bears, there is going to be trouble brewing there in LA. They took care of business. Now they have an extra day to prepare. And yes, now Quentin Johnson, the wide receiver at TCU, the first round pick, is starting to get involved in the action. Justin Herbert has to have a big-time game here, throwing the football. The Chargers have to move the ball. They have to be able to put up points. I think the Chargers do win this game here against the Jets, though, again, I cannot trust Brandon Staley to cover anything. So, my Week 9 NFL money line picks are Pittsburgh over Tennessee, KC over Miami in Germany, Cleveland over Arizona, Baltimore over Seattle, New England over Washington, Houston over Tampa, Rams over Green Bay, New Orleans over Chicago, Atlanta over Minnesota, Indy over Carolina, Vegas over the Giants, Philly over Dallas, Cincinnati over Buffalo, and the Chargers over the Jets. My 5 best bets for Week 9 of the 2023 NFL season are Steelers covering the 2.5 against Tennessee, Baltimore covering the 5.5 against Seattle, New England covering the 3.5 against Washington, Philly covering 3 against Dallas, Cincinnati covering 2.5 against Buffalo. in all 5 cases of my best bets this week. Yes, I'm picking favorites, but I believe I get the best quarterback in each game. Kenny Pickett over Will Levis, Lamar Jackson over Geno Smith, Mac Jones over Sam Howell, Jalen Hurts over Dak Prescott, and then Joe Burrow over Josh Allen. Some of them closer than others, but in those cases, I believe the coaching advantage, specifically New England over Washington, is what will give them the edge.
Like that clip from the Brand Sports Podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand Sports Podcast right here on YouTube.